They didn't realize someone else had seen it all. Lennox Khalifa. The 40-year-old billionaire, dressed down in a black tailored tuxedo, had stepped out of a heated boardroom call when he noticed a woman, staggering, being dragged. At first glance, he thought it was Zara. She wore a dress just like Rose's, and the lighting made everything a blur. "Zara!" he called, rushing forward. He shoved the men off her with the force of a man trained in confrontation. "Get your hands off my daughter!" They fled. Lennox carried the unconscious woman to his private hotel suite upstairs, his mind clouded with whiskey and assumptions. He'd been drinking heavily that evening, celebrating a closed merger and trying to drown the guilt of ignoring his late wife's death anniversary. He placed her gently on the bed, loosened the tight straps of her dress to help her breathe, and called his driver to cancel the rest of his evening. But as the night wore on and her eyes fluttered open, glazed, confused, soft, he noticed something odd. This wasn't Zara. And yet in the haze of that moment, driven by alcohol, blurred identity, and the intimacy of caring for someone who looked so vulnerable, lines blurred. Rose tried to get up, panic written across her face, but Lennox touched her hand. "You're safe," he murmured, his voice thick. "I thought you were someone else. I didn't mean to." I feel dizzy," she whispered. "Everything's spinning." He helped her sip water, their faces close. Her hand trembled in his. And then, an impulsive moment neither of them would ever fully explain happened. A kiss. A deeper need to feel something real in a world of masks. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was the drug's effect lingering in her body. Maybe it was the ache in him that hadn't quieted in years. They crossed a line. It was clumsy, unspoken, and tangled in emotion neither of them had words for. And by morning, when Rose woke up with her head pounding and dress askew, shame and confusion were the only things she could recognize. Lennox stood at the edge of the room, shirt half buttoned, nursing a cup of black coffee. "Mr. Khalifa?" she croaked. He turned slowly, regret softening his sharp features. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Rose scrambled off the bed. "This was a mistake." He nodded silently, running a hand down his face. "I didn't come here for this," she said, her voice trembling. "I was drugged. I don't even know how." "I know," he said. "I saw them. I stopped it. I thought you were someone else." She gathered her heels and purse, heart racing. "Please don't tell anyone," she begged. "This will ruin me." "I won't," he said quietly. She left the suite, her world upside down. The ballroom shimmered beneath 1,000 crystals, its gold and cream walls echoing with the quiet hum of Lagos's elite. Rose stood at the far end, tucked against a marble pillar, feeling like an outsider in a world woven with silk gowns, designer tuxedos, and the clink of champagne flutes. This was the Khalifa Group's annual charity gala, a star-studded affair meant to raise millions and solidify social power. To most, it was a night of luxury and calculated alliances. To Rose, it was a battlefield, one she hadn't chosen to step onto. Oh, her navy dress, though elegant, didn't shout money. She wasn't here as a guest. She was a junior strategist on the PR team, assigned to manage behind-the-scenes logistics and keep everything running smoothly. This was her chance to make an impression, quietly, professionally. But someone else had a different plan. Zara Khalifa, Lennox. Khalifa's 22-year-old adopted daughter watched Rose with disdain across the room. Her sequined champagne gown sparkled maliciously under the lights, and her voice, laced with venom, dripped into the ear of her equally snobbish friend. "She thinks she can climb her way into our circle with that cheap look? Disgusting." Zara had always hated Rose. She saw her as competition, even though Rose never asked to be. She was smart, focused, and had already caught the eye of top executives, including Lennox himself, who once said during a boardroom presentation, "This one has a future." That praise had festered like poison in Zara's heart. And tonight, she made her move. It started with a glass of champagne. A waiter handed Rose a tray, whispering that Madame Chinieri asked her to deliver it to the VIP lounge. As instructed, she carefully navigated the crowd toward the hallway beyond the ballroom. The corridor dimmed slightly, lined with rare paintings and velvet ropes. But as she turned the corner, a sharp pain jabbed her neck. Her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. The tray clattered to the floor. Rose tried to scream, but no sound came. Two figures appeared beside her, one laughing, the other grunting as they tried to lift her. "Take her to the executive suite upstairs," one of them muttered, disguised under a staff uniform. "Make it look like she followed him willingly." They didn't realize someone else had seen it all. Lennox Khalifa. The 40-year-old billionaire, dressed down in a black tailored tuxedo, had stepped out of a heated boardroom call when he noticed a woman, staggering, being dragged. At first glance, he thought it was Zara. She wore a dress just like Rose's, and the lighting made everything a blur. "Zara!" he called, rushing forward. He shoved the men off her with the force of a man trained in confrontation. "Get your hands off my daughter!" They fled. Lennox carried the unconscious woman to his private hotel suite upstairs, his mind clouded with whiskey and assumptions. He'd been drinking heavily that evening, celebrating a closed merger and trying to drown the guilt of ignoring his late wife's death anniversary. He placed her gently on the bed, loosened the tight straps of her dress to help her breathe, and called his driver to cancel the rest of his evening. But as the night wore on and her eyes fluttered open, glazed, confused, soft, he noticed something odd. This wasn't Zara. And yet in the haze of that moment, driven by alcohol, blurred identity, and the intimacy of caring for someone who looked so vulnerable, lines blurred. Rose tried to get up, panic written across her face, but Lennox touched her hand. "You're safe," he murmured, his voice thick. "I thought you were someone else. I didn't mean to." I feel dizzy," she whispered. "Everything's spinning." He helped her sip water, their faces close. Her hand trembled in his. And then, an impulsive moment neither of them would ever fully explain, happened. A kiss. A deeper need to feel something real in a world of masks. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was the drug's effect lingering in her body. Maybe it was the ache in him that hadn't quieted in years. They crossed a line. It was clumsy, unspoken, and tangled in emotion neither of them had words for. And by morning, when Rose woke up with her head pounding and dress askew, shame and confusion were the only things she could recognize. Lennox stood at the edge of the room, shirt half buttoned, nursing a cup of black coffee. "Mr. Khalifa?" she croaked. He turned slowly, regret softening his sharp features. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." Rose scrambled off the bed. "This was a mistake." He nodded silently, running a hand down his face. "I didn't come here for this," she said, her voice trembling. "I was drugged. I don't even know how." "I know," he said. "I saw them. I stopped it. I thought you were someone else." She gathered her heels and purse, heart racing. "Please don't tell anyone," she begged. "This will ruin me." "I won't," he said quietly. She left the suite, her world upside down. 2 weeks passed. She didn't return to work. Her mentor, Madame Chinieri, called, worried. Rose didn't answer. Then came the mornings she couldn't stop throwing up. A home test, 2 pink lines, a quiet scream into her pillow. She was pregnant. And the father was Lennox Khalifa, Lagos' most feared and respected billionaire, the man who had unknowingly saved her from disgrace and unknowingly taken her innocence. She didn't know what to do. But fate, it seemed, wasn't done with her yet. The boardroom was unusually quiet. Lennox Khalifa sat at the head of the long, polished table, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. The voices of his executives droned on about quarterly projections and branding strategies, but all he could think about was her, Rose. It had been over 2 weeks since the gala. Over 2 weeks since that night, blurry, intense, and deeply regrettable. Over 2 weeks since she'd vanished. No notice, no resignation, no word, no trace. He tapped his pen rhythmically against the table, ignoring the irritated glance from Zara, who sat a few seats down, pretending to be invested in the meeting while scrolling through her phone. She hasn't returned any of my emails, his assistant, Mrs. Abimbola, whispered after the meeting as they walked to his private elevator. Should I consider her absent without leave? Lennox didn't respond right away. His jaw was tight, eyes clouded. Something about her absence unsettled him, not because she was a rising star in the company, not even because of what happened that night, but because she didn't seem like the type to run. She was sharp, ambitious, principled. Even in the boardroom, she carried herself with purpose and grace. She didn't strike him as someone who would use a man or a moment for advantage. So why disappear? Meanwhile, Rose sat quietly in her small studio apartment in Surulere, staring at the ceiling. The air was warm despite the windows being open. A fan spun overhead, but the nausea wouldn't let her sleep. She cradled the paper in her hands. The ultrasound printout, barely 8 weeks along, and the heartbeat had already been strong. A part of her wanted to call him, tell him everything. But how could she? He was Lennox Khalifa, billionaire, head of one of Nigeria's largest tech empires, and father to the woman who had tried to destroy her. How could he even begin to believe her without thinking she wanted something? She didn't want pity. She didn't want money. She didn't even want him to be involved, though the thought of raising a child alone terrified her. She just wanted him to know. So she wrote a letter, a short one, folded it neatly and slid it, along with the test results and scan, into a brown envelope. Then she mailed it to Khalifa Group's head office, without a return address. Lennox was in his office when the envelope arrived. His assistant dropped it on his desk without thought. No sender, she said. He stared at the handwriting. Neat, familiar. He opened the flap and pulled out the papers inside. His breath caught when he saw his name scribbled at the top of a medical report. The air in the room grew still. His hands trembled as he read through the blood work. The confirmation. Positive. Weeks of gestation. 8. There was a short note attached. I don't want anything from you. I just thought you should know. I'm keeping the baby. Rose. Lennox sat back slowly, the letter dropping onto his lap. His child. His only child. Across the city, Zara Khalifa lounged in the penthouse she called her own, blissfully unaware of the envelope that had just detonated her carefully planned narrative. She had spent the last 2 weeks spreading rumors, crafting a version of events that painted Rose as a desperate intern who had seduced her father at the gala to get ahead. Her lies had traveled quickly, through assistants, secretaries, even a few low-level managers. She's just another opportunist, Zara said to her best friend over a late brunch. She'll disappear, and Daddy will forget her in a week. But she was wrong. Because Lennox had just begun to remember everything with startling clarity. The look in Rose's eyes that night, the way she trembled, the honesty in her voice when she said she didn't come for any of this. The deep, gnawing feeling in his gut told him something was terribly wrong with the story Zara had been selling. And now, a baby? The next day, Lennox pulled up in front of a modest hospital in Yaba. He had tracked the lab where the blood test had been processed. The receptionist hesitated before confirming, yes, the patient's name was Rose Okafor. He thanked her and left quietly. So it was true. Not just a rumor, not a game. He'd fathered a child with a woman who had every reason to hate him, and yet she'd asked for nothing. That night, he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Banana Island mansion, staring out at the city lights. A glass of whiskey sat untouched beside him. Zara entered without knocking, wrapped in silk and entitlement. You haven't spoken to me all day, she said. Is everything all right? Lennox turned to face her. What did you do to Rose? Zara froze. Her carefully painted face twitched ever so slightly. I saw the gala footage, he continued, lying. I know what you and those 2 boys tried to do. Zara's voice cracked. I didn't do anything. She threw herself at you. I was protecting our family's name. Lennox stepped forward, his voice cold. I'm going to find her. And when I do, you better pray everything she told me isn't true. He walked past her without waiting for a response. For the first time in her life, Zara was terrified. Not just of being caught, but of being replaced. Back in Surulere, Rose wiped her tears with the sleeve of her oversized hoodie. Her stomach was beginning to swell ever so slightly. And even though the nights were hard and the silence louder than ever, she placed a hand on her belly and whispered, "You're not a mistake. I don't care what the world says. You're not a mistake." She had no idea Lennox Khalifa was already searching for her, with a heart torn between guilt, responsibility, and something he couldn't quite name yet, love. The sun hung low over Lagos, casting a soft golden glow in the Khalifa Group's headquarters. Lennox sat in his black SUV, parked discreetly across the street from a small two-story apartment building in Surulere. He hadn't brought security. This wasn't a business call. This was personal, perhaps the most personal decision of his life. He'd finally found her. Rose. She hadn't answered his calls. He had found her number through an old HR file, but when his driver confirmed seeing her enter this building earlier that week, Lennox decided he had to see her face, to say something, to do the right thing. He climbed the stairs, heart hammering, and knocked. When the door opened, Rose stood there, barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater, her face pale but calm. The moment she saw him, her hand instinctively covered her small bum. They stared at each other. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I had to come," he said, voice low. "I know now, about everything." Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I told you I didn't want anything." Lennox nodded. "I know, but I want to do right by you, by the baby, by all of it." She looked away. "People will think I trapped you." "I don't care what people think," he said. "I care about you and our child." She shook her head, her voice trembling. "You don't know what Zara did to me." "I do now," he said, "and I'm sorry." There was silence. Then he asked quietly, "Let me take care of you, Rose. Just come home with me." Zara was lounging in the sunroom of the Banana Island estate when she heard the sound of the front door opening. She didn't bother looking up from her phone until the low rumble of Lennox's voice drifted in. "Careful, the stairs are marble." She turned and saw her, Rose, standing beside her father. A soft bag slung over one shoulder. Her belly, small but visible, gave everything away. Zara's expression twisted. "What is she doing here?" she snapped, standing up so fast her mimosa nearly spilled. Rose flinched, but Lennox stepped forward protectively. "She'll be staying here. She's carrying my child." Zara laughed sharply. "Your child? Her, you're not serious." "I'm very serious," Lennox said calmly, his tone like stone. Zara's eyes narrowed at Rose. "I told everyone what she did. You're going to bring her into this house like some prize? You really believe she didn't manipulate this entire thing?" Rose took a small step back, but Lennox reached for her hand. That small gesture, his fingers brushing hers, ignited something fierce in Zara. "You're replacing me," Zara hissed. "She's just a poor intern who spread her legs to—" "Enough," Lennox barked, his voice booming through the house. Zara's mouth snapped shut. He turned to face her, eyes dark. "You drugged her. You tried to ruin her. I saw the footage. I know the truth." Zara's face paled. "You're not a child anymore, Zara," Lennox continued, quieter now, but deadly. "And I will not tolerate another attack on Rose. She's under my protection now. Is that clear?" Zara's eyes burned with tears, not from sadness, but from unfiltered rage. She turned to Rose, her voice venomous. "You think you've won? You think carrying his baby makes you one of us? You'll never be anything but the girl who got lucky. A phase." Rose didn't respond. She stood still, trembling, but holding her ground. Lennox stepped forward. "I said that's enough." Zara stormed off, heels clacking like gunshots down the marble corridor. Later that evening, Rose sat quietly in one of the guest suites, staring out the window. The estate was beautiful. White stone walls, a garden the size of a football pitch, chandeliers in every room. But all she felt was heaviness. Lennox entered gently, holding a tray of warm pepper soup and crackers. "You need to eat," he said, setting it down beside her. She nodded but didn't reach for it. I'm sorry about Zara, he added. I should have known sooner. Rose turned to him slowly. She hates me, and not in that petty office way. She really hates me. She's lost, Lennox said, running a hand over his jaw. I took her in when she was 10. Her father, my former business partner, died in an accident, and she had no one. I raised her like my own. And now? Rose asked softly. He sighed. Now, I'm starting to realize I created a monster. He sat beside her, not too close. But you've shown more grace than anyone ever has. You were wronged, humiliated, slandered, and yet you still chose to carry this child, to protect them. She looked down at her belly. I didn't know what else to do, she whispered. You did the right thing, Lennox said, and I won't let anyone hurt you again. Not even Zara. For the first time that day, Rose allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she and her child were no longer alone. The Khalifa estate was silent the next morning, except for the soft chirping of birds and the distant rustle of staff preparing breakfast. Rose sat at the edge of the grand garden terrace, her fingers curled around a warm mug of ginger tea. The sun bathed the marble floors in gold, and for a moment, it almost felt like peace. Almost. She wore a soft cotton dress Lennox's housekeeper had left out for her, a pale yellow that complemented her brown skin and rested gently over her growing belly. Her hair was pulled into a bun, and despite the lingering storm inside her, she looked radiant in the morning light. But her peace was short-lived. I see the help is now being served on the master's terrace. Zara's voice cut through the calm like a blade. Rose turned her head slowly. Zara stood tall in designer athleisure, with a pair of oversized sunglasses perched atop her head like a crown. She held a green smoothie in one hand and scorn in the other. I'm not here to fight with you, Rose said quietly. Of course you're not, Zara sneered. Fighters have to be equals. You're just a temporary project. Rose's lips pressed into a tight line, but she said nothing. I hope you know this won't last, Zara continued, stepping closer. You're not the first girl to get pregnant hoping to secure a billionaire, and you won't be the last. But let me tell you how this ends. You'll be another name on a quiet settlement check, and I'll still be the one sitting at the head of this house. Before Rose could respond, Lennox's deep voice floated from behind them. She won't be going anywhere. Zara turned, startled. He approached calmly, dressed in a navy silk caftan, his presence as commanding as ever. And she will be treated with respect. Or you can start packing. Zara opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Good, Lennox added coldly. Now leave us. Zara stormed off, her smoothie untouched. Lennox exhaled and looked at Rose. I'm sorry. Again. Rose shook her head. You shouldn't have to keep apologizing for her. She's made it my full-time job, he muttered. 2 days later, Zara's next plan unfolded. She invited Rose to attend the Lagos Women in Power Charity Gala, an exclusive evening gathering for elite women in business, politics, and philanthropy. The event was hosted at a private marina in Victoria Island, filled with press and potential investors. Zara framed the invitation as a peace offering. And I thought it might be good for you to get out of the house, she said with a perfect smile. Show everyone you're not just hiding behind Daddy's name. Lennox had reservations. You don't have to go. But Rose, against her better judgment, said yes. She was tired of hiding, tired of feeling ashamed, and she didn't want to give Zara the satisfaction of thinking she was scared. She wore a simple yet stunning black dress, long, sleeveless, with a small slit that showed just enough. Her makeup was soft. Her natural curls framed her face perfectly. She looked beautiful, elegant, everything Zara hadn't expected. The moment she entered the event hall with Lennox by her side, whispers began to ripple. Is that her? Who's the girl with Khalifa? She's pregnant. Zara watched from across the room, teeth clenched behind a champagne smile. It wasn't going according to plan. Then it happened. Halfway through the evening, While Rose stepped into the powder room alone, she returned to find that her seat at the Khalifa table had been moved and replaced with a folded name card that read, Baby Mama of the Month. The laughter was immediate. A few women at nearby tables covered their mouths with gasps and amused chuckles. Some took photos discreetly. A waiter awkwardly tried to remove the card, but it was too late. The damage was done. Rose stood frozen, her heart pounding. Her cheeks flushed. The entire room blurred into one loud, shameful echo. And at the center of it, Zara sat, twirling her wineglass with quiet satisfaction. But before Rose could turn to leave, Lennox stood up from the head of the table, slowly and deliberately. He picked up the mock name card, read it, then looked around at the snickering crowd. My apologies, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. This card was placed by someone with the maturity of a child. Then he turned to Rose and gently pulled out a chair beside him. This woman, he said, still speaking loud and clear, is the future mother of my only child. She's brilliant, resilient, and far more decent than most of the people in this room. If anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly. The room fell silent. And then slowly there was a smattering of applause, then more. Zara's face crumbled. For once her plan had backfired, publicly, humiliatingly. And Rose? She blinked back tears as she sat beside Lennox, her heart pounding with a strange new emotion. Safety. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, protected. Loved? She didn't know yet, but she knew this. Zara had declared war, and she was done hiding. The ride home from the gala was quiet, but the air between Lennox and Rose was thick with unspoken things. Rose sat in the back of the Bentley, her hands resting gently over her small bump, her eyes fixed on the glittering Lagos skyline through the tinted window. Lennox sat beside her, one hand gripping the leather seat, the other twitching every few minutes as if tempted to reach for hers. You didn't have to do that, Rose said quietly. I did, Lennox replied. She humiliated you, in public. I've faced worse, she whispered. That doesn't mean you should. There was a pause, heavy with meaning. Then softer. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Again. Rose turned to him. Why does she hate me so much? I've never wronged her. Lennox exhaled deeply. Zara has always struggled with insecurity. She hides it behind pride. I gave her everything. Private school, luxury, my name. But maybe what she wanted was something I didn't know how to give. Love? Rose asked. Trust, he said. And now, I don't even know who she really is. Rose said nothing, but in her heart something stirred, a quiet ache for the man beside her. He looked tired, burdened, but still protective. And something in the way he spoke to her tonight made her feel not just like the mother of his child, but something more. That night in the privacy of the guest suite, Rose ran her fingers across the satin pillowcase and whispered to herself, You're not alone anymore, little one. He sees us now. Meanwhile, Zara sat alone in her bedroom, seething. The headlines were already flooding the gossip blogs. Khalifa CEO defends pregnant protege in public showdown. Billionaire Lennox Khalifa confirms baby on the way. Banana Island heir, apparent not from Zara? She threw her phone across the room. It shattered against the wardrobe with a sharp crack. She screamed. All her life she had ruled Lennox's world. People referred to her as the Khalifa princess, the adopted heiress, his favorite. And now, one woman, one nobody, had dismantled her empire. She had to go. The next morning, Zara made her move. She paid off a tabloid journalist to visit Rose at a cafe outside the estate. It was a setup. Photos were taken, questions asked. Is it true you met him through a scandal? Did you drug him first? Are you hoping to marry into the Khalifa fortune? Rose froze. No comment, she whispered, but her eyes betrayed her pain. The next day, the story went live. Mystery woman expecting Khalifa's heir caught in secret cafe meeting. Clout chasing? Lennox saw it the moment he woke up. His jaw clenched as he scrolled. The article was vile, full of lies, designed to shame and provoke. He stormed into Zara's room without knocking. "You planted this," he snapped. Zara sat cross-legged in a designer tracksuit, looking smug. "Oh, so I can't have friends in the media now? I warned you." "And I warned you," she spat. "She will ruin everything. Your name, your legacy, this family." "This family," he thundered. "You don't get to speak about family after what you did." Zara's face went white. Lennox advanced, slowly. "You drugged her. You tried to frame her. You humiliated her again and again. And now this? What kind of daughter does that?" Zara's eyes filled with rage. "I'm the daughter who's been by your side since I was 10. The one who stayed. You don't even know who she is. What if the baby isn't yours?" "I know it is," he said flatly. "Because unlike you, she has nothing to gain by lying." Zara's voice shook. "You're choosing her over me?" "I'm choosing the truth," he replied. And with that, he left her room and slammed the door behind him. Later that night, Lennox knocked gently on Rose's door. She opened it, surprised to see him standing there with a tray of food and a soft, apologetic look. "I saw the article," he said. "I didn't know it was a trap," she murmured. "I just wanted to breathe." "I know." He set the tray down. "You shouldn't have to fight this alone. Not anymore." She looked up at him. "Why are you really doing all this?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Because I care about you, and because you're carrying the one thing I never thought I'd have again. A second chance." Tears sprang into her eyes. He reached for her hand. "Let me protect you. Not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but because I want to." She said nothing, but the tears fell, and this time she didn't stop them. Elsewhere in the house, Zara stood by her bedroom window, watching them from a distance, her nails digging into the windowsill. She wouldn't let this end like a fairy tale. Because she had a secret. And if Lennox thought she was the villain now, he hadn't seen anything yet. Lennox stood on the balcony of his penthouse suite, the city of Lagos glowing beneath him like a river of light. The air was thick with night humidity, but his thoughts were colder, sharper. Inside, Rose was fast asleep in the guest wing, one hand resting over her small belly. He'd checked on her moments ago, just to make sure she was okay. She looked peaceful for the first time in days. But Lennox couldn't sleep. Zara's words echoed in his mind. "You're choosing her over me?" It hadn't hit him until now how strange that sounded. Not over us, not over your daughter, over me. The next morning, Zara stormed into his study uninvited. Her hair was flawless, her outfit a designer set straight off an Italian runway. But her eyes were wild. "You didn't come down for breakfast," she said stiffly. "I wasn't hungry," Lennox replied without looking up. She crossed the room, her voice trembling. "You're punishing me." "I'm holding you accountable," he said calmly. "There's a difference." Zara sat across from him, knees bouncing. "You've changed." "No," he said, finally lifting his eyes. "I think I'm just waking up." Zara's voice lowered to a near whisper. "You used to look at me like I was your whole world." Lennox blinked. "Zara, you were a child." "I'm not anymore." His stomach turned. Zara leaned forward. "I've always been here. Always. Even when those other women tried to get close to you, I saw through them. I protected you." He froze. "What are you talking about?" "I know about Florence and Amaka, even Yvonne." Those were women he had dated over the last few years, relationships that always ended abruptly. Zara smiled bitterly. "You never wondered why they left without closure?" His silence was answer enough. "I made sure they did," she said quietly, "because they weren't right for you. But I understand you, Lennox. I've been by your side since I was 12. I'm not just your daughter." Lennox stood slowly, horror crawling up his spine. "You called me daddy for years," he said, voice low. "Don't you see how sick this is?" "No!" she cried, eyes wide. It's not sick, it's real. I love you. You're confused, he said, and you need help. Zara stood too, her voice breaking. You never looked at me the way you look at her. Lennox stared at her. Because I never should. Zara slapped him. The sound echoed in the study, sharp and final. She gasped the moment her hand landed, covering her mouth. But it was too late. Lennox stared at her, disbelief etched across his face. Get out, he said coldly. Zara backed away, trembling. I didn't mean... Get out. She fled, slamming the door behind her. That night, Rose found Lennox sitting alone in the courtyard garden. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his collar loosened, and the usual steel in his eyes had been replaced with something softer. Wounded. Can I sit? She asked. He nodded. She lowered herself onto the bench beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then he said, There's something very broken in Zara. Rose looked at him gently. What happened? She's in love with me, he said flatly. Rose blinked. He explained everything. The sabotage relationships, the obsessive need to keep him to herself, and the moment in the study. Rose covered her mouth in shock. That's why she hates me. She knew I admired you from afar, Lennox said. Even before the gala, I noticed you. The way you presented your work, the way you spoke to everyone, kind but never fake. I didn't act on it because I didn't want to abuse the power dynamic. Rose's voice was barely a whisper. And now? Now I don't care about dynamics, he said, looking at her. You're carrying my child. You've walked through fire, and still you're here. She turned to him, eyes bright with emotion. I never wanted any of this, she whispered. I only ever wanted to work hard, build a life I could be proud of. But you were kind when you didn't have to be. And I see the man you are, Lennox. That's what scares her. They sat in silence, inches apart, until he gently took her hand. For what it's worth, he murmured, I see you, and I care for you, deeply. She didn't pull away. But as a fragile warmth bloomed between them, darkness stirred elsewhere. Zara sat alone in her room, a small velvet box in her lap. She opened it. Inside was a birth certificate. Her real one. And a crumpled photograph of her mother. Not the story Lennox had always told her. Not an orphan, but something else. She read the name written at the bottom, her mother's name, and a note scribbled by the nurse who'd helped with the birth. Zara was placed under Mr. Khalifa's guardianship per request, not legally adopted, temporary, confidential. Zara's eyes widened. She wasn't his daughter, not legally, not biologically, and that changed everything. Good, she whispered. Then I'm free. The grand ballroom of the Khalifa Tech Innovation Center gleamed under crystal chandeliers as staff prepared for the company's annual investors' dinner. It was Lennox's most public event of the year, where new projects were unveiled and key stakeholders were honored. But this year, Lennox had something else in mind. Not just a pitch, a declaration. He paced his office upstairs, adjusting the cuffs of his embroidered black tuxedo. The air was thick with anticipation. Tonight he would tell the world about Rose, about the child, about what and who really mattered. She deserves more than hidden rooms and whispered conversations, he murmured, looking at a framed photo of his late mother. She deserves to be seen. Downstairs in the guest suite of the estate, Rose sat before the mirror as the housekeeper pinned her hair up. Her dark green satin gown shimmered under the lights. The bump was gently framed by the gown's fitted waist. She looked elegant, glowing, and just a little afraid. Do I really have to go? She asked the housekeeper. You're the future, Mrs. Khalifa, the older woman smiled. The world has to start getting used to that. Rose blushed. Lennox had not yet proposed. Not officially, but the way he looked at her, the way he held her hand every night when she couldn't sleep, and whispered, We're in this together. It was enough. It felt more real than any diamond ring. But tonight, she would stand beside him, publicly, for the first time. Across the city, Zara stood in front of a cracked mirror in a hidden apartment she kept for nights like this. Her reflection stared back at her. Makeup perfect, hair slicked into a bun, but eyes hollow. On the vanity beside her was a flash drive. Inside it, a fabricated voice memo, twisted audio clips and edited sound bites of Rose's voice from old board meetings, cut to make it sound like she was bragging about trapping Lennox for money. "I'm not his daughter," Zara whispered. "So what do I owe him?" She slipped the flash drive into her clutch. Tonight, she would expose Rose before the entire board. And when the dust settled, Lennox would remember who was there from the beginning. The ballroom shimmered with Lagos wealth, politicians, media moguls, tech investors, and global partners. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and canapes. Then Lennox entered. Tall, commanding. Dressed in sleek black, his presence shifted the room's energy instantly. He didn't walk alone. On his arm was Rose. Conversations faltered. Eyes widened. Photos were snapped. Gasps echoed as people registered her bump, his calm confidence, and the silent message they were delivering. "She's pregnant. That's Lennox's heir? Isn't that the intern girl?" Zara, standing near the corner in a red gown like blood, seethed. But Lennox didn't glance at her once. He took the mic after dinner, his voice calm and rich. "I've spent my life building things, companies, networks, bridges between old systems and new, but nothing I've built has meant as much to me as the family I'm building now." He paused. "I'd like to introduce the woman I admire, respect, and care deeply for, Rose. She is carrying my child, my first and only heir, and I will protect both of them with everything I have." The room erupted into applause. Zara stood frozen, the flash drive in her hand burning like fire. This was not how it was supposed to go. Later that evening, as Rose stepped into the powder room alone, Zara followed. The door shut. Rose turned and froze. "Did you enjoy your little moment, HM?" Zara asked, voice like ice. "Parading around like a queen?" "I didn't ask for this, Zara," Rose said firmly. "You took it anyway." "You threw it away," Rose replied. "He gave you everything, and it still wasn't enough." Zara stepped closer, fury trembling in her hands. "He was mine. Mine before you. Before anyone. You don't get to come in and take what I've spent my life protecting." "I didn't take him," Rose said softly. "I loved him." Zara's eyes filled with rage. "He was never your story." And then, without warning, she raised her hand and slapped Rose hard across the face. Rose stumbled backward, hitting the sink. Her hand instinctively flew to her belly. Zara froze. She stammered, but it was too late. The door burst open. Lennox. He saw the handprint on Rose's cheek, her tearful eyes, the way she clutched her stomach. Then he saw Zara. "What have you done?" he growled. I just wanted—" "Leave," he said, stepping between them. Zara's voice cracked. "You're choosing her again? After everything I've done?" "That's exactly why," Lennox snapped. "Everything you've done. Everything I ignored." But not anymore. Security arrived. "Escort Miss Zara Khalifa out of this building. Permanently." Zara's screams echoed down the hallway. Later, back in the estate, Rose lay in bed, ice pressed gently to her cheek. Lennox sat beside her, his hand curled tightly around hers. "She's gone," he said quietly. "She won't stop," Rose whispered. "I will," he said. "She doesn't get to write our story." Tears welled in Rose's eyes. "Are you sure? You're risking everything for me." "I already told the world who you are to me," he said. "Now I just need to show you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Rose gasped. Lennox opened it slowly. A single, stunning diamond ring glinted inside. "I may not have planned for any of this, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life." He knelt beside the bed. "Rose, Will you marry me? For a long moment, the room was utterly silent, except for the quiet thud of Lennox Khalifa's heartbeat in his ears. He remained on one knee, the velvet box in his hand, the diamond ring catching the warm bedroom light like a promise. Rose stared at him. Her eyes shimmered with tears. Her hands trembled over the small swell of her belly. She hadn't expected this, hadn't dared to dream that someone like Lennox, with his power, his name, his world, would kneel before a girl like her. "I don't need anything," she whispered. "Not money, not status." Lennox smiled, still holding the ring. "Good, because I'm not offering you those." She blinked. "I'm offering you mornings on the balcony, shared glances across dinner tables, a father for our child, a partner for every storm life throws at us." His voice was low, grounded. "Say yes. Let's build this together." Rose exhaled shakily, then nodded. "Yes." Lennox slipped the ring on her finger. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Rose allowed herself to feel safe. Truly, fully safe. The next morning, the entire Khalifa household stirred with a lightness that hadn't been there in months. The engagement ring on Rose's finger glinted in the sunlight as she walked down the hallway with a smile she didn't try to hide. Staff whispered with joy. Some even clapped when they saw her. For many, she wasn't just the future Mrs. Khalifa. She was proof that grace and strength could outshine scandal and cruelty. But beneath that celebration, danger moved. Zara watched from afar. Disguised in a sleek black wig and sunglasses, she sat in a cafe near the company's Victoria Island branch. Her hands were clasped around a flash drive and a folded document. Across from her sat a man, middle-aged, nervous, dressed in a suit with the insignia of Khalifa Group peeking out from under his jacket. "You're sure you want to go through with this?" he asked. "She never belonged," Zara said, "and neither does he, not with her." The man hesitated. "If this gets out, I'll lose my job." Zara's smile was razor-sharp. "You should have thought of that before helping me sabotage the HR files." He swallowed hard, then passed her a small envelope. Inside it was a copy of Rose's original application, alongside a falsified disciplinary report that had never truly existed. It was a setup, one Zara orchestrated months ago. Before the gala, before the night everything changed. But that wasn't all. The birth certificate Zara had discovered in her late mother's things revealed something even more explosive. Zara had never been adopted. She had been taken in as a favor. Lennox had never formalized her adoption. She had no legal claim to his name, his company, or his legacy. But even more chilling, her birth mother's name matched that of a woman once blacklisted from Khalifa Group for insider trading. He taught her Zara had been hiding her identity all along. Now she intended to make Rose look like the fraud, before anyone uncovered that she was the real threat to Khalifa legacy. Back at the estate, Lennox and Rose sat on the terrace, sipping Zobo and laughing softly over baby name ideas. "What about Zara?" Rose teased, raising an eyebrow. Lennox choked on his drink. "Absolutely not." They both laughed. But the laughter was cut short by the arrival of his assistant, Mrs. Abimbola, her face pale. "Sir," she said quietly, "there's a situation." She handed him a tablet. On it was a viral blog post. New fiancé of Lennox Khalifa accused of faking credentials, trapping CEO with pregnancy. Photos were embedded. Rose's altered HR report, her intern ID, a voice recording of her bragging about using a child to secure a billionaire. Rose's hand flew to her mouth. "That's not me. I never said that." Lennox's jaw clenched. "She's still coming for you," he growled. "Even now." "I didn't fake anything," Rose whispered. "You know me." "I do," he said, taking her hand, "and I won't let her do this." But the media storm was already rising. Clients were calling. Board members were whispering. And Zara's plan was working. Hours later, Lennox stood before his executive board, defending Rose's reputation with every ounce of his authority. "She didn't falsify anything," he said, slamming the report on the table. "And the voice recording? That's fabricated. We'll bring in forensic audio experts to prove it." But the damage is already done, one board member murmured. This woman is everywhere now. She's not this woman, Lennox snapped. She's my fiancée, and if the board can't support her, I'll consider that a reflection on how little it supports me. Silence followed. The message was clear. Later that night, Lennox found Rose sitting alone on the stairs of the mansion, staring into the dark garden. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop with notifications. Some were congratulations. Others were filled with poison. She's trying to break me, Rose whispered, and I'm afraid she might succeed. She won't, Lennox said, kneeling beside her, because I'll tear down the entire world before I let her ruin you again. Then his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. A photo of Zara, with the company insider, and a caption, "She isn't done yet." Lennox stood slowly. "Get the car." "Where are we going?" Rose asked. "To end this," he said darkly, "once and for all." The city lights of Lagos glowed in long golden ribbons as Lennox's black SUV sped through the night. Rose sat beside him in silence, her fingers curled tightly around his. She had never seen him like this, calm but burning with a fury that simmered beneath the surface. "She never loved you like a daughter," Rose said softly. Lennox's jaw clenched. "She didn't love me at all. She wanted to possess me." They arrived at the address, an upscale but discreet high-rise in Ikoyi. The insider who had aided Zara lived here, and tonight everything would come to light. Lennox took the elevator alone. Rose waited in the car. When the door opened, the man, a mid-level executive named Toby, looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Khalifa, Lennox pushed past him and shut the door. "You falsified documents, tampered with internal reports, leaked files to the press. Why?" Toby backed away sweating. "Zara promised me a promotion, a seat on the board." Lennox cut him off. "You sold your integrity for a desk." I'm sorry," Toby stammered. "I didn't know she'd go this far." "She always would have. You just made it easier." Lennox tossed a thick folder onto the man's table. Signed statements, screenshots, evidence linking Toby to Zara's scheme. "You'll submit your resignation by 9 a.m., and if I see your name in any lawsuit or article, I'll bury you legally." Toby nodded rapidly, already shaking. Meanwhile, back at the estate, Rose stepped out of the car and walked into the quiet garden. The night air was thick with harmattan wind, the leaves rustling softly. Then she heard footsteps. She turned. Zara stood in the shadows, dressed in black, her face paler than Rose had ever seen it. Hollow, raw. "You're still here," Zara muttered. Rose didn't flinch. "You came back." "I needed to see it for myself," Zara said, "to see how far he'd go for you." Rose's voice was quiet. "You lied about everything, even your name, your past." Zara's lips trembled. "Do you know what it's like to be taken in by someone and told you were a daughter, only to realize you were just a favor to a dead friend?" "You twisted love into obsession," Rose said. "You wanted him to love you the way no father ever should." "I wanted to belong," Zara snapped. "And then you came in with your cheap shoes and your soft voice, and he looked at you like you were real." Rose stepped forward. "I am real. I didn't fake anything. I didn't take what you had. I was never your enemy, Zara. But you made me one." Zara's eyes glistened. "I was scared." "You should have asked for help," Rose whispered. "But instead, you chose hate." Silence. Then Zara pulled something from her coat. A USB drive. "Everything's here," she said. "The original HR file, the audio recording, the proof it was all fake." Rose stared. "Why are you giving me this?" Zara's voice cracked. "Because he doesn't look at me anymore. But he might stop hating me if I stop hurting you." She dropped the drive at Rose's feet, then turned and walked out of the garden without another word. Until 2 days later, Lennox stood before a sea of cameras at Khalifa Group's press hall. Beside him was Rose. "I want to thank everyone for their patience," he said. The false claims against my fiancée, Rose, have been thoroughly investigated and proven to be part of a coordinated act of sabotage from within the company. The person responsible has been terminated. Legal action is pending. Rose stood tall beside him, glowing, fearless. Lennox turned toward her, took her hand and smiled. There will be no further discussion about her past. She is my future. Weeks passed. Zara vanished from the public eye. No lawsuit came. No return to the estate. It was as if the wind had carried her away. The wedding was private, just family and close friends, held in a beautiful garden beneath Lagos's setting sun. Rose wore a simple, off-shoulder gown, her belly round beneath soft lace. Lennox wore a cream agbada with gold embroidery. He looked at her like she had always been his missing piece. "You ready to be Mrs. Khalifa?" he whispered, as the officiant asked them to exchange vows. "I already feel like I've been yours," Rose whispered back. They kissed to applause. That night, as the stars appeared above Banana Island, Lennox held Rose close, one hand resting on her stomach. "Our child will know love," he said. "Not pain, not confusion, just love." Rose smiled, her eyes full of quiet peace. And for the first time in a long, complicated, stormy life, they both believed it. Together. At last. 3 years later. The Khalifa estate was quieter these days. Less storm, more sun. Morning light streamed through the tall glass windows, casting long golden rays over the marble floors and curated art pieces. The garden outside had blossomed into a sea of soft pink hibiscus and white roses, carefully planted by Rose herself during her pregnancy. Lennox Khalifa stood barefoot in the nursery, his crisp linen shirt slightly wrinkled, holding a wriggling 2-year-old boy in one arm while trying to read an email with the other. "Daddy!" the boy squealed, grabbing Lennox's face. "Up! You're already up, champ," Lennox muttered, smiling despite himself. The little boy, Kale Khalifa, had Rose's eyes and Lennox's brooding stare. Mischievous, brilliant, loved beyond measure. Behind them, Rose appeared in a flowing robe, her growing belly gently leading the way. She was glowing more now than she had ever been. Motherhood suited her. So did peace. "Kale's already turning the nursery upside down?" she teased. Lennox turned. "Your son decided I was a trampoline at 6 a.m. "Our son," she said with a smirk, walking up to him. She placed a soft kiss on his cheek, then another on Kale's forehead. They stood there for a long moment, a little family wrapped in quiet joy. From the hallway, Mrs. Abimbola's voice called, "Your father's driver just pulled up. You're due at the foundation's launch event." Rose groaned. "Already? I thought it was at noon." "You're the co-founder," Lennox said with a grin. "You kind of have to show up." The Khalifa Foundation for Women and Child Empowerment, Rose's brainchild, was now one of the most respected charitable bodies in West Africa, funding maternal health, scholarships, and female-led startups across the continent. Nyantan, Zara had never returned. After an anonymous transfer of the USB and a quiet departure, she disappeared from their lives entirely. Lennox later heard she was working under a different name, far away, seeking help. He never followed up. Some endings didn't need closure. What mattered was here. Now. That evening, after the event, Rose and Lennox stood on their balcony, barefoot, sipping fresh hibiscus tea. Kale was asleep. The air was still, stars blinking above Lagos like scattered diamonds. "I still think about that night," she said softly. "The gala?" "No," she said with a smile. "The night you knocked on my door. Nervous, gentle, and completely unprepared for the storm I would become." He chuckled. "You were the storm I needed." "And you?" she asked, resting her head on his shoulder. "I was just a man who had everything but love. Until you gave me both." He kissed her temple. Below, the garden swayed in the breeze. Inside, the nursery lamp glowed warm, and above them, the sky stretched wide with promise. Their story had started in scandal, but it ended, beautifully, as it always should have, with truth, with love, and with a family that would never break.